764, 765. Oh, hey, sorry. Welcome back again to our narrative writing series. Today's lesson is talking about the heart of your story. Every story has a heart, some kind of, message, some kind of theme. Our objective today is to reflect on the heart of your story and elaborate to enhance the heart of your story. Okay? When you elaborate on something, you tell more about it. You give more emphasis to it. Okay? So first, let's think about the heart of your story. Every story, every narrative has something at the core, at the heart of it, right? So for me, after writing my draft about Home for Good, about running away for the last time, I had to really reflect and think, what is the heart of my story? What's at the core that I'm trying to communicate with this moment in my life, my childhood? It wasn't about my parents fighting. The heart of my story wasn't about me feeling left out, left behind. The heart of my story was realizing that my older brother Chris, truly cared about me. So I just did this. I drew a heart and I wrote my message. My heart, my story was realizing Chris truly cared. So I'd like you to do this on a sheet of paper or on a computer. Okay, try to just think of what is the heart of your story. What are you really trying to get across or communicate to your readers? Okay, so at some point you can pause it now or do this later. I want you to reflect on what is the heart of your story. Actually write it down. Okay. So that's the heart of my story. I'm going to show you, after you write your narrative and you look back and you think, you always got to think, did I do my job as a writer? Did I really communicate what this experience was all about? What was so powerful or important with it? So after I wrote my narrative, I looked back at the climax of my story, the highest point of action where, I'm running with my brother, finally comes and meets me, and I'm surprised, I'm hiding, and we have this face-to-face meeting where he's trying to convince me to come back home. Okay? And I thought to myself, I really need to draw this scene out. Like in a movie where they focus in on a scene, like I really need to zoom in on this scene. I really need to elaborate. That means to really stress or give more importance to this scene. So what I did, whenever I think of elaborating on something, I think of our narrative song, T, F, and triple D. So looking for ways to include T, F, triple D. So thoughts, feelings, details, like sensory details, something you can see, smell, touch, description, like adjectives describing the place or the people in your story, and dialogue. Okay? And I'm going to focus, when I thought about my story, in this scene, in this climax, I really needed to incorporate some dialogue between my brother and me. Okay? And that can really make the reader feel like they're seeing it, they're hearing it, there's a real exchange. It's not just a summary of, I ran away and my brother took me back home. Dialogue brings the characters' voices to life, right? So I decided to elaborate, including dialogue. I'll show you what I did. We're here in this last body paragraph. This is the climax of my narrative, and we're talking, and I added some things in when I revised to elaborate, and I had Chris say these words: "Nothing's going to happen, I promise." I stood still, my eyes moving from his face to the street. "Come on," he said. "Here's a few bucks for ice cream. We'll wave down the truck when he comes by later." Chris held out 3 wrinkled dollar bills. "Let's go home." So those 3 or 4 pieces of dialogue that I included from my brother's point of view really elaborate on, what he did to come and bring me back home. It really ties back to the heart of my story, which is realizing, what, Chris really cared about me. I thought he was just inside playing his video games, and he noticed I was gone, and he came back to find me. He didn't just, I didn't just say he took me back home. I incorporated that dialogue between my brother and I to elaborate on, that scene of showing how he cared enough to really say those things, offer me money, to get me to come back home and try to convince me that everything was going to be okay. Okay? So what I want you to do is two things, draw this out, think about what the heart of your story is. And the second thing is think about TF and Triple D, and pick one that you could elaborate on. Look for a part in your story, maybe the climax, some kind of part that you can elaborate on. I'll show you one more example. One of my students, Lacey, in her narrative, she wrote about being a teacher. Okay, and it was called Dreams at Last. The heart of Lacey's story is realizing that's what she wanted to do when she grew up, was be a teacher. And I just circled this one section. Lacey, when she revised, added this paragraph in. Okay, and it says, I've always loved children like a mother and wanted to see them a majority of the time. If I became a teacher, I would get to see them almost all the time. I realized I wanted to be a teacher because I loved children. So when she did this activity, the heart of her story was realizing she wanted to be a teacher. And so she elaborated towards the end of her story, after these experiences, she elaborated by saying how, realizing she loved children so much, she knew this is what she wanted to do. So she found a place where she could add some more detail to really stress the important part and the important message of her story. So that's what I'd like you to do. See what you can come up, write it on a note card or a piece of paper. And I always like to tell what paragraph it would go in. Like for me, it was, that dialogue in paragraph 5. So when I type my final copy, I know to include that elaboration in. Okay? So again, think about the heart of your story and make it come alive. I gotta go back to work. 763, 764.